Hey, I'm Tommy Chong. Welcome to High on Homegrown.
Yes, everybody, and welcome to this week's Grow Guides from High on Homegrown, the cannabis podcast from percysgrowroom.com. This week, we're talking about the later days of the flowering stage of cannabis plant's life cycle. We talk about what to feed the plant, what to expect, what to look out for, bud rot and hermes and things like that. Just things to try and help you get through the flowering stage with less problems. And if you do have problems, how to get around them. Of course, we have some questions in the Q&A section towards the end of the show, so stay tuned for those as well. And if you have any questions, of course, just head over to percysgrowroom.com, sign up to the forum, and we'll be able to help you out with any questions that you might have. Next week, we'll be discussing harvesting a plant, how to tell when the plant is ready for harvest, how to prepare for it, how to actually harvest the plant, and how to be well prepared for the actual harvesting stage, having the right scissors, having the right equipment you need for a successful harvesting period. But for now, here is part 9 of the Grow Guides, the later days of flowering stage. I hope you enjoy, and I'll catch you at the end of the show. See you then. Yes. So this week, we're going to carry on with the Grow Guide series. I think this is episode 9 of Grow Guides now. It's episode 8 or episode 9. And we're going to be talking about the later stages of the later days of the flowering stage of the cannabis plant. So last week we discussed the early stages, identifying the sex, what to feed the plant, what to do before transplanting, if you're going to transplant, all that kind of stuff to get you through the early days. And now we're going to be going from mid-flower up until the end of flower and what you can do to have the best environment for the plant, what to feed the plant, what to do if you find any mold, any defoliation, any tips or tricks that we might have that would benefit your growth. So TG, you wasn't here last week. So you want to talk about some of this stuff, man? I say we're in the mid-flower. How long would you say on average does it take for a cannabis plant to go from the flowering stage to the harvest stage?
Pretty variable question that's really dependent on the genetics. Mm-hmm. So, but on average, for most, typical home growers who aren't like psychos about like, I need this old haze that's only old timers first cut and all that shit. Most of them, I would say 8 to 9 weeks. Mm-hmm. You're looking at some of them maybe a bit longer. You get into the narrower leaf. Yeah. The super silver haze, actually, great example. You can get, like I said, into upwards 22 weeks, some really long flower and even perpetual flowering if you get into the equatorial Thailand shit. But that's a no, not for new growers really, or any growers unless you're into that, because it's a big commitment. So yeah, 8 to 9 weeks, I would say, maybe up to 11 for the longer ones. Mm-hmm. That you typically see on the market now.
Because most of them are hybrid nowadays, isn't it? So they're mixing between the sativa indica thing, which I know you hate that terminology, but it's the best way to describe it in this sense.
Everybody knows what you mean for sure. Mm-hmm. So, yep.
Because you would find if you're having an indica dominant plant, then you're looking at a shorter flowering period. And if you're looking for a sativa dominant plant, you're looking for a long flowering period. And some of them sativa dominant can go like 20 weeks, can't they? Was that Acapulco Gold? That's a real long one. Only 18 weeks, mate.
Well, the Barney's Farm version of Acapulco Gold is actually pretty short. I think it's like a 9-week strain. That's a different hybrid of it. But the original was somewhere like, start looking around 18 weeks and keep on looking until you're happy with it. One of those.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Grinspoon by Barney's is a famously long flowering, weird looking sativa, I guess, if you want to call it that. I hate that, but but yeah, you can get really long ones. Old timers haze, that's a classic, really long flowering, upwards of 18 weeks even. But those plants generally give you a lot more different tastes and flavors and almost like a psychedelic type high compared to the more like sedative, almost like, the highs that people experience between what we call sativa and indica are not very varied, to be honest, especially when you group them in with those long flowering ones, because the Afghani influence on everything, that really thick, short, musky, earthy type shit, that's in a lot of genetics. That's kind of the gene or the archetype for the short, stocky, fat leafed, fast flowering plant. So, and we do see that, like you said, in a lot of hybrids. It's buried in there somewhere. And most growers and breeders have been breeding for quick flowering for obvious reasons, illicit reasons. The quicker you can get shit out, the better. So, yeah, but 8 to 9 weeks is the answer to the question.
About 70 days, isn't it?
Yeah,
70 days seems to be a good estimate.
Okay.
It's like a little bit over 9 weeks, but yeah, I wouldn't go past 70 for most of mine.
So yours is in the living soil as well, right? Because you're a living soil grower. You don't add anything to feed the plant during the flowering period to your soil?
No. Well, Epsom salts if I do see any deficiencies, but generally they make it right till the end with just properly pH'd water. Yeah,
and that's the same for you as well, isn't it, Marge?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
GB, you use Cannabis, right?
You?
What would you do towards like in the mid flower towards the end? Do you change your nutrients up at all?
I do. I change them up. I leave it for about when I start seeing the flowers coming through. Normally leave it for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, kind of when I'm happy with looking at them, and then I add in a bit of PK. I add in low because I feed every day, and I build it up gradually. So I'd start in at maybe 0.5 a milliliter, and then after 2 days I'd up it a bit and up it a bit, and then I'd feed that for about 2 weeks, and then I'd start lowering it down. It's just to give it a bit of the added potassium or potassium and nitrogen, is it?
No, phosphorus.
Phosphorus, that's it. Sorry. Yeah. Just add the extra bit in, just to give it a bit of bulk into the buds.
What about you, Monkey? What do you do?
Pretty much similar to that. Now, of course, I'm using a different nutrient system. The one I'm using is an advanced nutrient system, and in the Sensi Cocoa formula, that's 2 separate bottles for grow and 2 separate bottles for bloom. So super simple in this scenario. Is just switch to the bloom newts.
Yeah.
And then, the flowering curve, or the nutrient flowering curve seems to be that early on, you're pretty much going to be where you wanted to be right toward the end of EEC wise as toward the end of veg. And then you want to start ramping that up to mid flower, adding the PK like GB says, and raising that nutrient levels a little bit. Then after you reach that mid flower stage, you can kind of look at the flowers and not drinking as much or things like that. Then it's time to start tapering the nutrients back down.
So do you do a flush then, Monkey, at the end?
Well, at the end, I don't do a flush. I just stop feeding, and I'm just feeding water. I mean, just so.
Yeah, so that's like
as far as flushing everything out first, no, I don't do that. I basically just stop feeding them, let them use everything that's in the pot, and that's for like the last 2 weeks of grow. When I start looking at them and classic signs, the buds will start showing little bits of color around them. Every strain's different. Some's little glints of red or gold will show up. Some up with a little purple. Something will happen. That's kind of showing you that the plant's going to be starting to get toward the end, and that's when I'll go ahead and start tapering out my nutrients and replace. And toward the end, the last 2 weeks before harvest is just going to be water. But I don't flush. Like I said, it takes about a week if you don't flush for everything to get used out that pot. And then you'll be on pure water after that.
See, for the people who might not know, flushing is where you just add a lot of water to your medium to flush out any nutrients that's in there, and then just give the plant water for the rest of the growth. So no food. It's just going to be having water. And this apparently breaks down any salts inside the plant that might make the smoke harsh and things like that. But there's debate around that as well.
Yeah, and I've never really done a head-to-head, grow the same cut 2 ways. I guess that's something that somebody should really around the forum should do. I know other people have done it. Reports are varied.
There was a paper done here in Canada on that exact topic, and they did analyze it with like whatever GCMS or HPLC or whatever they use, and they didn't find any difference between flushed and non-flushed plants. Actually, it was John Stemeroff at the University of Guelph in 2019, I believe. If you're interested, Google. that.
Well, I would be curious, did they also put it blind taste test up to, set regular smokers? Could anyone tell the difference?
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
That was only one study too, so
the cure is more important, apparently. Curing the cannabis properly
Right.
and drying it properly. You can't dry it too fast. It has to be dried at the right pace and then cured afterwards as well. But I've done crops where I've not flushed and flushed and tried it out, and there's no difference really.
I don't flush in general.
But we'll discuss flushing in in the next episode maybe, or should we do it at the end of this? I don't know.
Well, it's just part of the late flowering stage.
Yeah,
or would
suppose.
that be for the harvest then?
But
Yeah,
while we're talking here about what to feed a flowering cannabis plant, and you're into the flush part here, I've found though, growing in cocoa, that an overfed cannabis plant can produce very harsh herb.
Yeah.
So you really want to be careful with what you're feeding your cannabis.
But that's
plants
that's because it gets a lot of nitrogen put into it,
Mhm.
and you'll see that it's got darker leaves, and that won't break down so well during the drying and the curing.
Right.
And,
So overfed weed is not really the best weed.
Mhm,
You really want to be careful with you feed it the right amount, and depending on your medium. Now, of course, if you're following TG's famous super soil recipe, you don't have to worry about that because the microbes will handle that for you, right, TG?
I tell people they do. They're helpful.
I mean, we so what we feed in the plants, we give it the PK for a while. Is there anybody use any of them? When it comes to the flush, and you got what's called a flawless finish or anything like that
there's,
towards the end?
one of them sledgehammer
Blood
flawless
booster
finish.
shit, right?
Mm.
You talking about the flush stuff or the extra little sweeteners? Which ones you talking about?
But when it comes to the flushed flawless finish and shit like that,
I mean, that's usually a lot of that stuff is just like yucca extract, really, and all it really does is it's like a surfactant. It basically just cleans all the stuff out of your media. No, I used to use it. Since I think I'm happier now doing it the way I'm doing it, and that is to start feeding water a little earlier and just let them use what's in the pot. It seems to be a little more gentle on the plants, and they kind of coast into the finish better.
You guys just cut it, and like if you do flush, you just cut it like at 2 weeks, you stop feeding entirely, or do you wane it down on the feed until there's nothing left in the water?
No, well, that's what I would class as the final flush is that you just stop feeding and you just feed water for the week, and you allow it to take the nutrients that is left over there to gradually build it down until there's nothing coming out. That's what I class as a flush. I know Mackie was saying different.
Well, you got the flush where you just want to get rid of a shitload of nutrients in the medium because it's got salt buildup or it's been overfed.
That would be the mid. That would be a mid flower flush is what I would class that as. Yeah.
And then you have the flush at the end, which you do that main flush still. You'd get say your pot's 10 liters in volume, you'd get 20, 30 liters of water, flush that through the pot medium, the pot and the medium, until the EC was coming out very low, so it's removed all the salts. But what would happen then is you get like the osmosis shit, where the salts that are built up in the liquids in the plant would force their way into the medium again. So you want to flush again after that and try and wash out them salts and just keep letting the plant push out the salts from itself back into the medium so you can flush it out again. So it like starves itself and also flushes out old food. So you've done your main one, and then over the next week, 10 days, you're just doing smaller ones, but you don't need so much, but you want to be getting runoff with every time you water the plant. That's a proper flush like that.
No, I do that at the end because in cocoa, you always want a little bit of runoff. So every day I am getting a mini flush happening. But over the course of 10 to 14 days, that's just happening quite a bit. So I'm reasonably sure the media is pretty well clear.
If you're not overfeeding the plant and the plant's had a healthy life, then I don't think there's any reason to be flushing it at all. If it has a salt buildup and it has problems, then flush it. But feed the plant right to the end. Because as Frenchie said, there's going to be a certain time when the plant, and Swami also said the same thing. It's like the plant is telling you, can you chop me down now, please? I'm kind of done. And you don't want to just look at your watch and be like, oh, but you've only been flushing for 5 days and be concerned about it. It's like the plant's fucking done, man. Chop it down.
Plants are a lot like people, as people age and get older, they stop eating as much and as varied. And you know, same with plants.
Yep.
That's how I tell my plants they're done. When I'll be watering like normal, like I have been the entire grow, and then all of a sudden the plant is like still heavy the next day. And I'm like, oh, okay, the roots are slowing down then. They're not drinking as much anymore. It's not transpiring as much because the leaves are dying off. You know, senescence is a natural part of the plant's life unless it's put back, triggered back into re-veg, right? Through, you know, 24 hours of light or whatever the fuck you want to do. But yeah, plants naturally die. Cannabis is an annual at the end of all things, and annuals don't go, you know, they don't continue to grow. So they have an end point, and that's what this is. So yeah.
But there's some dreaded things that might happen during the flowering stage, which you have to be looking out for at all times. One of them is a hermy, where the plant might grow male parts, spread pollen, and pollinate your buds, and you'll get seeds in your buds. And then there's also mold and powdery mildew as well. Of course, there's bugs to be scared of, but that's not so much of a concern as the other things, I don't think. But
the closer you get till the end, the less concerned the bugs are and shit too. But mold, always a concern. Yeah.
Yep.
And something you need to be able to look out for, just so your buds don't go fucking tits up. But make sure you've always got a fan blowing across your buds. It's, of course, when you go indoors, this is outdoors, it has the wind. But if you do get a big rainstorm outdoors and the plant isn't covered during flower, then make sure you go out there and shake off any big droplets of leaves, droplets of water off the leaves, just to try and prevent it from happening. But indoors, you always want a fan blowing at your buds to make sure there's no stale air. It doesn't get too humid around the buds, because mold will start to form if you're not careful, especially in the big buds too. It's a bitch, man.
Look at my picture there. Hey, that's mold. That's what you don't want.
Ugh.
Fucking gross.
And you know, you can't see the pictures on the audio bit of the podcast, but it pretty much looks like mold. You know, like mold looks like this white
like
fluffy
fuzzy
stuff.
Fucking shit.
White, cottony, fuzzy junk with some leaves that are dying back and turning brown right there. And
You know, it just doesn't look right.
And if you pinch it with your fingers, it's kind of soft and gooey and cottony.
Centigrade.
You know it's not good at that point.
Pictures over at Percy's Grow Room if you want to see those.
Yep. Post your own pictures over there. We'll tell you it's rolled or not.
But keeping the right environment in the grow tent will prevent these things. Like to prevent the mold, the mold and the bud rot, because because you get powdery mildew, which is a kind of mold that gets on the buds and the leaves and shit. And you also get your bud rot, and they both can be avoided just by having good air circulation and the right temperatures in the grow room in the first place. You know, keep the humidity down between 45 and 55%, and that will massively reduce the amount of chance of mold or bud rot starting off on the buds. But then the hermy thing, this is where the trouble comes in, right? Yeah, we've all had hermy crops before, innit? I've had hermy crop.
I had one, my last big one. Yep.
I don't think any grower out there that hasn't had a fucking hermy.
What do you say, Marge?
I've never had one.
Ooh.
Oh,
Skills.
Must be nice. Must be nice.
only.
I ain't saying that I never had a hermy up until the last, not the last grow, the one prior to that. And that was grower mistake.
Probably means I'm new, so that's not good.
They're not always the end of the world, though.
No, it's still smokable, but that's the thing. Even if it has seeds, and if they're no good,
You always make hash.
True.
Well,
I smoked all mine, man. I just picked the seeds out of it.
timing is super important with hermies. You know, like if I don't know, you guys can't see on the audio version of my picture, but this is a picture of some Jack Hare that I grew. You remember when we did that grow off and everybody had those problems with the nanners?
Yeah.
This is that. So these ones were just popping out of the top, and this was maybe like 6 weeks into flower. So for me, this was no big deal. I just popped them out. And even if they did open up, the stigma at this point are not super fertile anymore. And even more importantly, there's not even enough time for the seeds to really, mature and stuff. So you're probably not going to lose a lot of weight and energy in seed production if you did have an issue like that. Where you want to watch out is kind of like early on, late flower, I guess, right when we at the transition period, maybe like 4 to 6, well, around 4 to 5 weeks. Yeah, if you start popping shit out, then you might have an issue. So,
yeah,
but yeah, like you said,
this can often be caused by light leaks, and light leaks will cause those nanas to grow most likely. That's why you'd find it indoors but quite often. If the dark period is interrupted too many times and it just has an irregular light cycle, the plant, or there's other stresses as well, but it's most likely to do with the light cycles. The plant will get confused at what time of year it is, and it needs to make seeds in order to pass on its genetics to the next generation in the new growth season. So it will produce some male parts to spit out some pollen to make the seed, so it can pass its genetics on to the new year. Yeah, it can be down to bad genetics. This is why we always say go with a good seed bank, a reputable seed bank and breeder who have got a good reputation, because this is less likely to happen when it's been bred out and make sure that the genetics are really stable. But even the best genetics can hurt me if it's under the wrong conditions. So you just have to be very careful, especially with light leaks. So now, if you do find any of these bananas and they look like thick pistils, if you like, or they look like actual bananas, especially when they open up like in 5 bits and spit pollen about place.
Little tiny bananas, about what, maybe 4 millimeters long.
I mean, they're called bananas for a reason. They look like bananas, you know. You just try and look out for those. And if you do see them, like TG said, then you can just pinch them off. But before you do that, just spray a little bit of water on them. So just when you pick it off, that will help keep the pollen in. The pollen won't move if it's wet and heavy. So just spray it a little bit.
Fucks pollen up. It destroys pollen. So yeah, if you wet pollen, it ruins it, which is good in this case. But yeah, you got to be careful picking them off. And like the one I have in my picture, you can see is growing out of the top of a bud. Those ones to me are a lot less severe than ones that are hanging out of the bottoms of the nodes where you'd have new growth, because those ones literally will open up like a little like upside down umbrella kind of thing, and then just shit pollen. Fuck, that's what happened to me. Like you said, from a light leak. My god bud I run is fairly unstable in that sense. So any interruption they're just like, nope, we're fucking, oh shit, you know, and then they hurt me. So yeah, that happened, and I got a bunch of seeds out of it, and you lose vigor and stuff too in the growth. So not ideal.
So as the plant goes through, I mean, the longer the flowering period is, the more chance there is of something fucking up and going wrong. So if you're a new grower, it's good to try and have something which is indica dominant, because it will be finished quicker. Have like a 8 to 10 week flowering period, and then you can get your shit finished and you can have your buds by then. But if you got another 6 weeks to go after that, if you go in a heavy sativa, it's going to be less likely that something's going to go wrong. You know, you get these big juicy colas growing. It'll be hard to keep the environment the same for that amount of time. There can be problems. So if you're a new grower, stick to something that's got the short flowering cycle. That will help out a lot. For a nice cheese, it will always do good. You know what I'm saying?
Becky's favorite.
Yeah. So what kind of temperature and humidity you will hold in your tent? What you say, Marge? What do you have? What temperatures and humidity do you keep your plants at in flower?
It's very unscientific, and it's probably just whatever my house is at. So that's the short answer, because I'm doing a micro grow and I just have them in the closet, and it's just whatever my house is at. Just one reason why I like the micro grow, because it's so easy.
Just easy, yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Less stress.
It is a lot less stress, yeah.
What do you say, Monkey?
Flowering, well, start the flowering period with the same temperatures in veg, but as it starts maturing, I'm dropping the temperatures. I'll finish my flowering cycle with the lights on temperature somewhere around 70 to 75 Fahrenheit. And I would normally have that about 5 degrees Fahrenheit higher in veg. And nighttime temperatures in flower, I like to drop them down a little bit more, maybe to 60 Fahrenheit at night. This lets me, I don't know, the buds tend to get nice and tight and very dank if I keep the temperatures a little colder toward the end of flower.
What do you say, TG?
Nice colors.
Yeah, good colors too.
Yeah, for me, I'm in veg, I usually run, around 55, and then I drop it about 10% for flower. Ideally, I'm at 45%. But yeah, 40 to 45. But being in Saskatchewan, where it's like drier than like almost anywhere, I'm usually at around 20%, which I mean isn't bad, because I also have 5 tents in my room, so the heat gets pretty hot. But heat and dry, actually, I've read and maybe experience. I don't know, because I've never grown not this way to have the other side to compare to, right? But brings out some more resin and stuff because the plant just is like, fuck, it's dry. We need to protect ourselves better, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, I'm usually sitting around like 20-25%. I mean, the tents are usually really full, so they're transpiring a lot, which helps to keep the humidity up. But yeah, maybe 30% in the winter time, which is the time where I grow the most. And then temperature wise, yeah, sitting around, ideally I'm at 24 to 25, but usually I'm up around 28 Celsius. Sorry. That's like maybe low, just under 80 Fahrenheit, I think, something like that. And then my nighttime temperatures go down to maybe 18, 17, depending on if I forget the window open, 15, you know. So, yeah.
What about you, GB? You struggle with high humidity?
Yeah, my humidity is pretty high, and I just found it fucking too hard to fucking tackle it, so I just don't really bother, to be fair. I draw
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, no, well, you see, it's I set up it's normally in around the 60 to 50, normally on the lower end, to be fair. But I got around it by making a heat box outside, so I haven't tested it lately because I only have the one ink board, and I don't have many hydrometers because everyone I had was just shite and they all broke. But yeah, no, normally I use a dry. I have a small little dryer and I draw the air through that first, with a small heater element in that, and then that goes into a tent, and then that into another tent. But yeah, no, it tends to keep it kind of in and around that.
Yeah, I'm like Marge. Mine's just around where my house is. I don't do anything serious to try and change the temperature and shit like that. It's always about 20 something in my house. So it's usually okay. I used to check it quite a lot, but it really don't make a difference. So what I've noticed in a small home grow setup like this, you know, it's always around the right kind of temperature. It's around, I mean, I like to try and keep it at 26 when I checked my temperature. And I've seen no difference since I've stopped checking. So maybe it's still around 26. Don't even know. But yeah, just don't check anymore. Just let the plants do their thing.
I like trolling
Plants can adapt pretty well to a really wide range of whatever you throw at them.
I have the temperatures. I always keep right. The temperature is always, I keep it up around 27 degrees with lights on. And then with lights off, I like to drop it down to around 24. Maybe down to about 22, and then like monkey for the last 2-3 weeks I drop even the day temperatures down. I drop the lights down to maybe around 20, 24, 25 with lights on, and then I drop it down to below to around 18, 19.
Yeah.
And that really brings out the colors in it.
Yeah, the colors, and I think it also brings up the terps. You know, the terpenes aren't evaporating at that low temperatures in there. And I find when I harvest, I mean, the room really reeks for a lot longer after I harvest those cold plants.
Yeah.
Like that.
See, I even tried to do this. Oh, we leave a series. That's for a different topic.
So, Mackie, we've been talking all about temperature and humidity and stuff like that. And, you know, we ought to tie this in with bud rot, because humidity right there in that late flower stage is where we got to worry about that bud rot with the humidity. So, I mean, you really want to be low, and when you're in late flower and those colas are getting heavy and are nice and dense, and you start seeing those fan leaves start turning yellow and maybe start shriveling, you need to have your humidity down nice and low in that tent, somewhere 40% or lower, because that you're in prime conditions right there for bud rot to start, with all that beautiful vegetable matter sitting right there.
Yep. And you don't want to find it. Brian said here that he's never had bud rot, but you know, you will one day, Brian. It comes to us all, man.
I used to say that.
I used to say that too. Again,
it's so fucked because you can't salvage it at all. Like,
no. And sometimes you don't even know you have it till after you chop and you're sitting there trying to trim away stuff, and it's like, oh man, I didn't even see this.
And that can be the same with seeds as well. You didn't even know until you're trimming, and then there's seeds in the fucking bud. You're like, what the fuck is this?
It can't happen. Yes.
The thing with rot too is it's always in the biggest, best bud, obviously.
Oh, and the most dense, beautiful spot in that bud too.
The nice, big, beautiful colas are the ones that typically had it.
Tell me about
I
it.
had to throw. I threw a whole stem away because of bud rot, and it fucking killed me because it was the best bud, like you said.
No, that's what's going to happen. It's gonna attack the densest, heaviest buds first, usually. You know.
It's pretty
And then-
ubiquitous, you know. These are fungal spores that are just flying around. So that's why it's important to keep your grow room as clean as possible. Filter the incoming air if you can, which nobody can unless you're a psycho. But you know, don't come in directly from outside working in the garden or mowing the grass and go directly to your tent. Shit like that. Keep your place clean and airflow, like we've said many times now. Yeah, because bud rot is the worst.
Yeah,
All
but
right,
it
Brian,
really
we're
is,
not
isn't it?
trying to jinx you.
It is like the worst thing you can find on your crop. I mean, you find spider mites, you can get rid of them, you can clean them. All the bugs, you can clean them and get rid of them. But when it comes to bud rot,
Oh, you're fucked.
it's game over,
All
man.
you do is you start cutting and trimming until you find clean bud, and you still got to go a little bit further to past that even to get it. But yeah. You got to throw it out. There's no way to get around it.
And most importantly, if you do come across rot when you're trimming or anything, make sure you either clean your scissors very well or fucking change them, because you don't want to get any of that shit further down the line.
That is, man. It's big important.
Yeah, very important. So it's always a good idea to have a couple of scissors,
Yeah.
you know, with you when you're going into a trim, because they kind of blunten out a bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's for another topic.
Yeah, that's for next week, I think.
Yes.
Harvest time next week.
Yeah.
These colors as well. We spoke about colors briefly there. What kind of, because some strains are more likely to display different colors towards the end of their growth cycle, but that can also be brought out by putting them in colder conditions, right?
Yeah.
Not
Well, that's
all-
I was told that by a friend of mine that's a good grower. And he was saying that like he drops his down even to like 14 degrees.
Yeah, below 15 is supposed to really get it kicking off.
The thing though is unless the plant is predisposed to produce that, it's not going to do
Right.
it, even if you drop it to minus 100.
Yeah,
So
some plants, the
Yeah.
green ones, I think the ones I've tried to force purple into that aren't, going to go that way, they'll usually turn yellow or something like that. They won't go purple for you.
and some just go purple. Like I've flowered it, like I said, 28 Celsius. And
Yeah.
I've had my godbud. My godbud goes reliably black, like no matter what temperature it is.
Mhm.
So there are ones that just do that. Yeah.
I've had some kush do that. Yeah, just for no reason. Everything else is green, and the whole plant just at the end turns black. Beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah. The chlorophyll kind of gets stops being so, because chlorophyll is a really dominant molecule in the leaves. That's why they look green, obviously. But once that kind of wanes off, you get those expressions of the flavonoids, mainly anthocyanin is the purple pigmented one. And it's just, it's just like in fall in the leaves of trees, you get those beautiful colors, the reds and shit. So yeah, same thing.
Now you don't have to chase these in cannabis. The only reason we chase them is it kind of gives the bud a nice bag appeal. It's pretty. I mean, come on, this is a hobby. We want to do it because this is what we like to do. But you don't have to chase colors.
Who doesn't like growing pretty plants? So
Yeah, well, I have to say the only reason why I bought the Space Needle, the God Space Needle, was because it's bright pink flowers come out.
Well, I mean, that's common. I mean, so many of growers around Percy's you'll see all the time. They'll buy the best looking bud in the catalog, and I do the same thing. I mean, sometimes you see it, it's hard to resist it with some of those pictures, but we all know that some of those pictures are not real. Enhanced
Salt.
colors or in things.
Giant grain of salt. But yeah.
Oh, it is always with a grain of salt. But even if you get a tinge of it, it's nicer to have even a tinge of nicer color.
Yeah.
Just a plain old.
It's in a lot of stuff, like my stuff that I bred, the 8472 and the crystalline endian cutis, they all do it reliably, like without any temperature swings. At least in my experience growing it, and everybody that sends me pictures, they're just like this, how in the interveinal areas of the leaflet, like you have that center vein and then it branches off into the side veins. In between those, that's what turns purple, but it doesn't ever hit the vein. That's like my favorite leaf color configuration, and those ones do it. It's beautiful.
I got some lovely colors with the A472, to be fair.
Yeah.
But there's some other stuff that we should cover as well. If you get bugs or anything, it's best not to spray anything onto your buds ever.
Oh yeah,
Especially if you're growing indoors. I mean, we said earlier about spraying the pollen, just a little bit of water on that bud where if there's a banana in it, you're taking the banana away, spray a bit of water. That'll be fine, but just make sure you keep the fan on it to make that water evaporate faster. You want it to be gone before you really take the fan off it completely, because any water can easily turn into a mold spot and begin to grow mold. High humidity can do that when the condensation lands upon your leaves, shit like that. But that will evaporate hopefully when the fan's on it. But if you spray your plant with pesticides or any kind of feed, because sometimes you can foliar feed the plant, shit like that, that's just going to get onto your buds and can encourage or will infect it with heavy metals or shit you don't want in your buds in the first place. So once the flowers start to grow on your plant, don't spray it with anything. All the feeding should be going through the medium.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's some companies out there that'll tell you can spray things on buds, but we do not recommend it. Like Mackie said, we don't even recommend water.
Mm-hmm.
I have hard water here in my house, and even if I spray that, just plain old water, it is going to leave big ass white deposits from the the mineral salts, the calcium carbonate and shit that's in there. Right. So why wouldn't the same thing happen with something else? The water dries out and evaporates and it leaves the thing. So maybe it goes away with the water, but maybe it doesn't. I would never take that risk. So don't spray as flower. Very good advice. Yeah.
Right. Is there anything else that we think missing here from the flowering stage? I mean, just feed the plant as much as it can until it stops eating, and then you can flush it when it comes to the last 2 weeks, especially if you're growing in with salt-based nutrients. Then you can flush if you want to. We'll sort of cover that next week in the harvest. Just keep the plant happy, man. Keep the decent temperatures of around 26 degrees Celsius. What's that, about 76 in Fahrenheit? Yeah.
You want to keep it as healthy as possible, because this is the time when your secondary metabolite production is at its peak, aka the resin and the THC and the CBD and the THCV, all that shit. So if your plant is at peak strength, it's going to be like pumping out as much as genetically possible, which is what you want, especially if you're running fire ass genetics. So which we all are, of course. So yeah, health is like, why wouldn't you don't just, you want to be healthy all the time. Everybody does. Everything does. So yeah.
Keep your plants very healthy in its late flowering stage. It's that last 2 weeks is when you're going to start seeing the magic from healthy plants. And that's when the buds are going to start swelling and get very heavy.
We want to mention the UVB thing. I can't remember who else mentioned that earlier, but Chilbert just said that too. Because you do that in late flower, if you do that at all.
I was asking you about that. Was it today or yesterday, Teach? Because I have the micro UVB.
Yeah,
I was wondering when to stick that up. You were saying it's around week 5 or 6, is it?
Yeah, like I usually put it in. I think it's for the last 3-ish weeks. I'll put it in at least 60 centimeters above the canopy, and only on during the last, like, of the 12-hour flower cycle, probably at about hour 7 to 9, I'll have it come on just right at the end, but not right at the end, but closer to the end. You know what I mean? For only 2 hours too, only 2 hours. So yeah, the UV just triggers the plant to be like, oh, I should produce more resin, because you don't actually, it's not photosynthetically active radiation, aka PAR, but the plant does use it to trigger stuff internally. So at least allegedly, that's the idea. So yeah,
it's like sunscreen, isn't it? It produces more trichomes to be more like sunscreen.
Essentially, I mean, that's one of the theories for sure. THC and the resin just protects the tissue from damaging UV. So yep, do it. Works good.
Yeah, man. Anything else to add for flowering there then? Any particular way which you can increase terpenes? That we should drop that one in there. The terpenes are what gives the buds flavor, of course.
Yeah. So don't put ice on your soil. Don't do that.
Yeah. That's a tried and tested myth. That one.
I'm
off with that. Yes. But adding some back guano to the medium towards the end can increase the flavor. Apparently, I've tried it and it increased the flavor, but that might have just been the strain.
There is loads of additives and bits and pieces that you can get throughout the ground. The likes of bug candy that makes your
It's really hard to say though.
Things the same as like the likes of the boost can of boost will make them bigger and supposedly will make it more flavors.
What we should all do is we should do experiments. You know, we know how to clone. So what you got to do is you take two clones, identical genetics from the same identical mother, and then one of them you feed bud candy and one of them you don't under the identical conditions in your tent. It would be a really easy experiment to see if it actually did anything.
Right.
I have a kind of an experiment. They're all the same seed from the seed bank out of the same pack.
There's still too much genetic variability between seeds.
See, that's why I'm doing one where I'm doing the can of feed that they say to use, because I normally don't use that. I'm using one as a cocoa organic that I'm just feeding with just water, and it's doing okay. It's an awful lot smaller, but it's doing okay. And then I have another one that I'm just feeding it the exact same as I always do. And the two in the cocoa, or in the two that are feeding with the salts, are fucking identical. There's no difference in them. And I'm feeding it like a quarter of what I'm feeding one of the others.
Yeah. One other thing that I do know that I've read, and it has been shown to increase at least terpenes, not cannabinoids, is drought stress. So withholding water, more than you normally would, letting the medium dry out a bit more than you normally would. Not maybe to like droopy fucking oh shit kind of levels, but yeah, there has been a bit of evidence to show that drought stress can help increase the terpenes, but more research is needed on that one for sure too. It's a good time. It's the best time because you get a smell, you're like, ooh, I love that smell. Ooh, it smells different today. And like, yeah, it's fucking awesome.
Anything to add there, Marge? Yeah, do you want to add anything?
No, I think we covered it all. I do like the comment about the smell because I'm in my office, which is where I'm housing my micro grow, and I can smell it right now, and it's delightful.
Yeah, it's delicious, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love that shit, man.
Oh yeah.
So there we go, everybody. That's all we have for the end of the flowering stage. Next week we'll cover when to harvest and how to tell that the plant is ready for harvest and how to actually harvest the thing in the best way possible. Sounds like a good subject, I think. And that's everybody's favorite stage. Most people's favorite stage.
I like actually the final stage, the smoke report.
Harvesting means you got to trim it soon, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
That's why I like the
It's
smoke
all line
report.
trimming. That's the whole thing.
You don't fucking grow come to grow 25 plants and see how much you like it. Spend a week.
Yeah, the most I harvest at a time would be like fucking 4 max.
Yeah, and I I have other shit to do, so usually my harvests take me a fucking week, and it's just like, oh, I dread it so much.
Yeah,
I know.
Whatever. You gotta
I usually have
stagger
to
it.
schedule a day when I do a chop. And
Yeah, I'm always by myself too, which kind of my own fault. I could ask people to help, but then they want weed, and I want all my weed.
Yeah, I want all my 40 ounces.
Yeah, I need it.
my missus is not going to help. She'll help me with the smoke report, but that's about it.
Yeah, they all always help with that one.
Sure, no problem.
We do have a couple of questions here, though, in the chat. I don't think we got any out of the thread this weekend because the chat's gone. We've got a different chat now. So everybody, just if you have questions for the show, then drop them into the listener mail thread over on Percy's, and we'll get them from there. We have some in the chat we can cover. Showing off here, he says Devil's Advocate. We had one from Marge. Did you see that one we had way up here? I'm looking for cues now. It's
I did from Mr. Wes.
Magic butter machine.
Yeah, that's right. Do you want to hit that one, Marge?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you use a magical butter machine? I got a soup maker that's identical and want to use it for can of butter. I don't know what the soup maker is, but the magical butter machine, I do have one, and it's basically the machine you set the temperature, you put the weed and your butter, oil, whatever it is that you're putting in there, and then turn it on, and it just infuses it at that precise temperature. And it does have a thing to like agitate the stuff inside every so often. So conceivably the soup maker is probably very similar, and you could probably use it for the same thing, I would think. because all it is really is a precise temperature set for a certain time. And I'm not even the agitation is absolutely necessary. I have a couple other infusion devices that don't have that feature, and it works the same.
The magic butter machine, I have one too. It's essentially just a weed themed immersion blender, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like it is like an immersion blender, the thing that mixes the stuff up. But I have an as well that it infuses, same idea, but it doesn't have the thing to agitate the material.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. It just cooks it.
Yeah, I think it's more the precise temperature at the sustained period of time that makes them so effective. But because essentially those immersion circulators, you know, when you do water baths, that cooking technique, that would be sort of the same idea as well. So repurposing the soup maker for it would probably work just fine.
I should say I made garlic butter. Have you ever made anything like that in your magic butter? Like,
no, I haven't, but I don't see why you couldn't. Like you could really technically infuse anything. Like
Sounds
it wouldn't
good,
be
man.
because I usually every summer I'll make like infused olive oils with fresh herbs, and you could probably use the magical butter machine to do the same thing. I do it the slow way. I just leave it on a windowsill for a couple of weeks and infuse olive oil with basil or rosemary or something. But I can probably use the magical butter machine too.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what all the literature inside of the Levo machine is all about, is using other herbs, because of course they can't tell you about cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really nice, actually. I mean, it has nothing to do with weed, but it's a nice way to enjoy your fresh garden herbs all year long.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with any infused oil. It's flavor.
Yeah.
Shonoff had a question here, says devil's advocate. What if it is a choice of bud rot or PM, or spraying something that is known to be safe on the buds? Outdoor here is impossible without spraying beneficial bacteria during flower. I mean, you can spray that shit during veg and that is preventative. But I don't know about in flower. You can if you want to.
Well, I mean, what he says there, the key in his question is known to be safe. You know, that's fine. I don't really know of anything that is safe to spray in flower on the bud, but if you do, if it's known to be safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to taint the flavor for one. Whatever it is will taint the flavor, especially if it's later on in the flowering period. But outdoors, if plants get wet outdoors, they usually evaporate all the water off by themselves, and you're not really any more susceptible to bud rot than being indoors with high humidity, really.
But you know, devil's advocate, like he says, if it's either no crop or a sprayed crop, I guess, even though I wouldn't want to have to make that choice, I guess I would try to save the crop with the spray.
Especially with PM. PM's different to bud rot. I mean, if it's bud rot, then no, you can't really spray anything to do anything afterwards. You can use preventative, which can be done during veg. But with powdery mildew, you can spray your plants with like a milk mix, and that will get rid of the powdery mildew and prevent it from growing back again.
I think one of the outdoor growers in Canada was using
I think Cody was
right, hydrogen peroxide on.
Yeah, that's an option as well. Yeah.
So different things.
Yeah, you know, if you have to, then do so, but try not to.
I guess if I had to choose something to spray, hydrogen peroxide would probably scare me less.
I don't know. It sounds strong.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just an extra oxygen molecule in the water, so you know.
There's different kinds of uranium, and some of them isn't too radioactive.
Right. Some of it's enriched, right?
Exactly. Try that uranium-13 shit.
38, 235. Those are your isotopes.
Yeah.
238, 235. 235 was the bad one, wasn't it?
I think 238 is the one that makes.
That's the one that goes boom. Okay.
235 is the more commonly accounted one, which can be upgraded to 238.
See,
enriching.
I believe.
Bunch of freaking intellects here, stoners, talking about making enriching uranium now. We're definitely going to get banned from YouTube now.
Totally, you're right. It's at the opposite. 235 is the one.
That's the bad one.
Right, and then 238's upgraded, I guess, into 235 that will now become fissile and blow shit the fuck up. Hopefully not.
Lactobacillus will prevent PM and bud rot, says Chilbert.
Yeah,
So-
and was Steve from Potent Ponics was telling us how to make that.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
go
We
back
should
to
be
that
coming up
episode
with-
if you want to know how to make your own
But I think that
lactobacillus.
one's just a Patreon thing, isn't it? And it'll be out on
Ooh.
the interview hasn't gone out to people yet. We got Chris Trump coming soon to explain all this shit to us as well.
That's true. So that information of how to make your very own lactobacillus will be coming.
But I think that's about it for the questions. I don't see any more. There we go, everybody. That was part 9 of the Grow Guide section. And if you have any questions, just head over to pursuitsgrowroom.com, sign up to the forum, start a thread, and ask your questions there. And we're more than happy to answer any questions you might have to help you along through your grow. Next week, we have part 10. It's all about harvesting the plant. So we've gone through the whole grow cycle so far. You should be well topped up on all the knowledge you need to grow your own plants by now. And now we're getting to the harvesting stage. So tune in next week for that. Don't forget as well, today is Friday. So usually we have the session, but we're not going to have the same kind of session today. At 7 o'clock, Bonnie Goldstein will be joining us for a live Q&A about using cannabis medicine for autism and epilepsy. So we're going to go live from 6:30 and then just talk for a while and before Dr. Goldstein shows up. But if you're free today, then come and join us. So you can head over to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/highonhomegrown. And the show starts at 7 p.m. GMT, 11 a.m. PST, or 2 p.m. EST. So if you're free this evening or this afternoon, wherever you are, then come along, join us for the show, ask some questions, and share the link with anybody who might find the information interesting as well. But that's it for this week. We'll catch you on Sunday for the live show or on Monday again for the cannabis news and events. I hope you have a good weekend. Hope you enjoyed the show, and stay high, stay safe, and all that. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.